some words said by a fine young man named Thomas Jefferson. Education is the most powerful weapon that you can use to change the world. It is the key to unlock success in life. Ladies and gentlemen from all walks of life, my name is Ian Karanja, student from Strathmore School, in proposition of the motion that states that this house believes that versions of history taught by countries through the education system should not be designed to promote nationalistic pride. And round about now, when I look at my watch, it is the 5th hour of the afternoon, the perfect hour of proposition. I'd like to start by defining a few terms. Versions of history. What are these versions of history that we talk about today? They are the particular accounts of history taught from one source that are different from those of another source. Secondly, I would like to define the education system. This term generally refers to public schooling, not private schooling, and more commonly to kindergarten through high school programs. Schools or school districts are typically the smallest recognizable form of the education system, and countries are the largest. To design, the term, the word, the words that ring around this word is purpose. What is to design? Like, why are schools there? They're designed for pupils to go and learn. Why is there piano? For human beings to play pieces of music. So now the term design means something that was created for a certain purpose. And now to promote. What is to promote? It is to support or to actively encourage a cause or venture. And lastly, nationalistic pride. I would like to break this word in two, nationalism and pride. First, what is nationalism? Nationalism is when a group of citizens come together for a common good in a nation. And what is pride? It is a feeling of or deep pleasure or satisfaction derived from one's own achievements, the achievements of those with whom one is closely associated, or from qualities or possessions that are widely admired. Thus, nationalistic pride is an ideology and movement that promotes interest of a particular nation, especially with the aim of gaining and maintaining the nation's sovereignty or self-governance over its homeland. It also encourages pride in national achievements and is closely linked to patriotism. As the wise saying goes, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And the proof that these versions of history should not be designed to promote nationalistic pride are in the points that we as the proposition are going to deliver to you today. Now to my first point, these versions of history are in many books used by learners, Evolving World, Milestones, and such alike. The different versions tend to bring a miasma of confusion among learners. For example, with reference to attacks or communities that are in the history books. In one book, it says that the Ndembele threatened the Shona. Thus, the Shona retaliated against the Ndembele. And in another book, it says that the Ndembele did not threaten the Shona, and thus the Shona attacked the Ndembele without any cause. Another example, which is similar, is wars. Nation A threatened Nation B. Thus, Nation B attacked Nation A. While in another book, it says Nation A did not threaten Nation B, but Nation B attacked without any cause. All these tend to sink learners in this sea we call confusion. Of course, all history books definitely do not tell the same story. They revolve around one leader or king and his works, that another book is to differ. And my question is, are these history books reliable? I would answer that the older ones are less accurate. Though for us to solve this problem is for us to have one book that is well researched and approved so that learners can use that one book for revision and examination. So as long as the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, I stand in proposition of the motion that states that this House believes that versions of history taught by countries through the education system should not be designed to promote nationalistic pride. And thus I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you very much, first proposition speaker. We now welcome the first opposition speaker to respond to the case of the proposition. Here.
Thank you. My name is Wambuki Modo, and I'm here to strongly oppose the motion that states that this House believes that versions of history taught by countries through the education system should not be designed to promote nationalistic pride. Well, first, let me start by breaking down the motion. A nation or a state. This is a state. A nation is a state of linguistic and cultural homogeneity, and a state is a centralized government that can exercise authority on a given distinctive territory. National, nation, nationalism or being nationalistic is having or expressing strong identification with one's own nation or a group of people, while pride, as my fellow proposer said, is a feeling of deep pride for one's achievement. Therefore, we could easily say that nationalistic pride is a sense of collective unity that turns large groups into extended families. In itself, this says nothing about how one nation should treat another. In everyday life, we love and identify with our own families, and this, however, does not make us believe that neighboring families pose a threat. Well, nationalism does have its bad sides because everything has a bad side, and there may be extreme nationalism at some point. This is the case we had with the Nazi Germany with the case of Hitler, when they had the right idea but the wrong interpretation and execution. According to John Green, a famous author, this is when one tries extreme nationalism, that is when one tries to eliminate or deny difference in order to create a mythologized unitary policy. In such cases, other forces are at play. So I'm not denying the fact that nationalism may be a bad thing, but this is only in extreme circumstances, and it's not all the time. Back to the motion. We're talking about the education system being designed to promote nationalistic pride. We are not saying that we are changing what we are teaching our students. The only thing we want is how we are going to teach this history. How are we going to relay this information to our students? Are we just going to dump the information? Are we just going to dump this history and give them vague points on what history was? No, we want to teach them that we as a nation have grown from the past. We are not going to omit anything from this history, just changing how we are teaching the history, making sure that the students who are teaching this history to are going to learn something and they're going to be proud of their country with what they've learned. This leaves with teaching students to be proud of what their nation's history has to offer. We leave students with so much to learn. This will reduce the number of mistakes. This will reduce repetition of mistakes that happened in the past. This will make us grow from the people we used to be, become better human beings. Because as developing humans, we should not want to repeat mistakes of the past. So therefore, we should teach our students that we should teach our students in a way that will help them learn from their mistakes and grow from them. Finally, from an article by the American Psychological Association, it has been proven that promotion of national pride can help a student be more self-confident and have more and raise their self-esteem, reduce and low self-esteem issues and deaths caused by suicide. Because currently, 0.5 to 1.4 people in the world die of depression. This may seem like a small number, but no, that's around 800,000 people dying of depression. So are you going to willingly sit there and pass up this opportunity to reduce the number of students suffering from depression because of self-esteem issues? No, I won't. Will you? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, second speaker, for your speech. We now welcome, first opposition for your speech. We now welcome the second proposition to continue with the case of the proposition. Here.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brian Burumaina, and I propose the motion that states this House believes that versions of history taught by countries through the education system should not be designed to promote nationalistic pride. I wish to begin by pointing out some errors in my opposer's statements. First and foremost, we personally, as a House, do not believe that...
Stop. Kindly remember the instructions. You need to unmute, you need to unmask your video.
Oh, my apologies.
And start again. You can start again.
Can you see me now?
Yep.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brian Mina, and I propose the motion that states, this House believes that versions of history taught by countries through the education system should not be designed to promote nationalistic pride. I wish to begin by opposing some of the motions that were brought up by the members of the opposing team. We personally, as a House, do not believe that there is anything wrong with nationalism. Nationalism brings forth national integration, inclusivity, and economic, social, and political development. Designing history is not suitable as it may in fact bring forth false ideologies of a nation and a people. And finally, agreement with you in the sense that self-esteem may be brought down by lies about us. Rather, I agree with the opposing team when they state that self-esteem may be brought down by the misunderstanding of a country's history, and we do very much agree. But what we do in fact say is that we should not lie to our children by creating false versions of history that hail our nation and praise us, bringing us false pride that is really not valuable as we might expect. I wish to expound on a point brought on earlier by my predecessor. We have the understanding that we should only have history books that have been approved by a body who upholds the values entailed by history, that being integrity and truth. This building on what history truly is. Thus, I wish to explain thus, nationalistic pride, if properly understood and applied in a positive way, does not rely on lies or pretense to grow, or rather to maintain its status. History itself serves as a moral compass of what has been deemed right, continues to be seen as morally decent, and what needs to change. Filling history with lies only beats the purpose of it being taught in schools. Take, for instance, the example of Christopher Columbus, who we all know as an Italian-born, acclaimed discoverer of the New World, or as the Americas, as we so call them now. What is not taught in schools or in the education system is that Christopher Columbus, despite all his good deeds, or rather discoveries, is that he was the launcher of centuries worth of indigenous genocides. Take, for instance, the Taino indigenous people, which was reduced from about 250,000 people to a mere 100 people within the 60 years that Christopher Columbus was in the United States of America, or the New World, as we so call it now. In addition to this, I wish to bring up a second point. History is taught with the intent of informing society on its past successes and failures. If it is corrupted with falsehood, it prevents the growth and development of a society. If past mistakes are covered up, how are we ever to learn from them? I wish to quote Confucius, who once said, "Study the past, if you would define the future." In the book Our Island Story, which is a book that was initially used as a book for the GCSE system of education, composed by Henrietta Marshall in 1905 on the 1857 Indian Mutiny. Marshall relates the massacre at Cawnpore, where mutinying Indian soldiers under the command Nana Sahib killed unarmed British men, women, and children. Marshall writes that Sahib acted out of the deep wickedness of his heart in killing 300 British victims. What she neglects to mention is the estimated 100,000 Indian victims of the British reprisals that took place over the following years. I wish to give a second example. School History of England, a book published in 1911 by Charles Fletcher and Rudyard Kipling. It describes the black and mixed race population of the West Indies as lazy, vicious, and incapable of any serious improvement. The authors were slightly more forgiving of the native people of East Africa, whom they claim, and I quote, "welcome the mercy and justice of our rule." We see that these history books have been tainted with lies, claiming that a whole people are lazy and not willing to change, or because they were uncooperative with this so-called nation. We have the understanding that changing what history entails, giving history as a false story, well, really, what history is the truth and the integrity of a nation, holding true to the facts and things that have in fact happened. We believe that versions of history should not be tainted with lies or sugar-coated, but rather told as they are, because in this manner, we bring forth change and we look forward to the building up of a new generation of wonderful human beings. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, second proposition speaker, for your speech. We now welcome the second opposition to respond to the case of the second prop.
Good evening. My name is Pauline Wawasi, and I'm here to strongly oppose the motion that states that versions...
Sorry, just give me a second. Okay, kindly unmask yourself, and yep. All right, thank you. Let's go.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Pauline Wawasi, and I'm here to strongly oppose the motion that states that versions of history taught by countries through the education system should not be designed to promote nationalistic pride. I'd like to agree with the second proposition speaker that stated that it's possible that versions of histories found in different history books may cause confusion among the learners, but we are not saying that we should change the history or we should lie to our students. What we are saying is we should teach the history in a way that our children will find pride in knowing that, yes, we did make mistakes in the past, but we are learning from these mistakes to become a better nation. It is possible to correct mistakes in textbooks. It is possible for these mistakes to be looked at. I'll give you an example. A few years back, Iraq was publishing in its textbooks that it had won the Iraqi-Iranian war, but US was able to pick up this issue with the UN and their textbooks were banned. It is possible to ensure that the right history is out there. But what we're trying to say is that we need to teach our learners that there is to find pride in belonging to their nation, to find pride in knowing that my nation did this and this and this, and it might have been long. It might have been wrong, but we are learning and we are becoming better people. That being said, I'd like to remind the crowd that too much of everything is poisonous. Nationalism in its own is not the problem. The problem with people as Hitler and Mussolini that are credited with causes of the Second World War is that they had too much of nationalism. They had reached a level of nationalism that we refer to as extreme. Nationalism where you feel as though you have the need to correct something in your nation. That is not what we're advocating for. We're advocating for nationalism that gives a sense of pride, nationalism that makes certain citizens sensitive to social damage that goes on in their country. This type of nationalism has been proved to reduce corruption and reduce crime rates. This is from a study carried out by World Bank of corruption estimates that shows that countries with higher nationalism rates generally have lower corruption. This is because of the trade-off, feelings of unnecessary social damage that can be caused by such social injustices. Therefore, nationalism on its own, as a feeling of pride towards one nation, as a feeling of love towards the people of that nation, can reduce things as tribalism, racism, that have been going on for centuries. Of course, we are not naive to say that all crimes and all cases of racism and tribalism will disappear because of nationalism. But it is proven that if we continue to teach our children through the education system about our history, then cases will reduce. For example, racism in America is still very present to date, but we do not fail to acknowledge that it has gone down over the past centuries. This is because the education system has been diversified. Stories of racism have been expanded. Therefore, the students are able to learn that the things that their ancestors did were wrong, but we are not limited by that. We are able to move forward. Additionally, nationalism in a country creates stability. It creates a healthy national environment that is more likely to develop the economy, because you're less likely to fight with your neighbor if you know that you and your neighbor belong to the same country. If you feel pride in knowing that this country is where you're from, and you understand that this is what makes you citizens of this country. That being said, with stable economic and national environment, creating a stable and economic national environment is better for the nation, because a nation is better to be built by considerate citizens than to be built by selfish individuals who are worried only about themselves. Nationalism creates a form of consideration in citizens that makes them want to care for others. It's not just about you with nationalism. It's about you and your neighbor and us building this nation. One might say that it's not just about a country. It is about global cooperation. We are indeed moving towards the era of the global village. But global cooperation cannot begin without stability and peace at home. You can't move forward as a world if we cannot move forward as a country first. Additionally, nationalism can be seen to reduce social imperialism. These are effects that nations still feel from colonization and periods where they... Okay.
All right, we thank second opposition speaker for her speech, and we now welcome third proposition to respond to the case of the opposition. Here. Third proposition.
Hello everybody, I'm Matthew Mandy, and I'm here to propose the motion that this House believes that versions of history taught by countries through the education system should not be designed to promote nationalistic pride. Okay, so yes, I will just recap what has been said by my predecessors, the first and second opposition, and add a few points if necessary. So first off, we're not saying that nationalistic pride is a bad thing. I mean, it has been said that nationalistic pride also promotes the pride of someone personally.
Third prop, is it only me who has lost him?
No.
Okay.
I think he lost connection. Maybe he'll reload. But yeah.
Apologies for that. So as
Sorry.
I was saying...
Okay, I think what you can do, just start again so that we reset everything.
Okay, all right. So yes, hello everybody. My name is Matthew Mandy from Strathmore High School, Nairobi, and I'm here to propose the motion that this House believes that versions of history taught by countries through the education system should not be designed to promote nationalistic pride. So basically what I'll do is I'll just recap what my first and second proposition speakers have said. First off, I'd like to say that nationalistic pride, there's nothing wrong with that, to be honest. It has been proven that nationalistic pride, feeling proud about one's country, also improves the pride personally of one. So I'd just like to say that there's nothing, we're not saying that nationalistic pride is a bad thing. We're just saying that the way it's being, history is being taught right now, it's giving the children too much national pride, such that they develop what I'd call a big head and get the mentality that I'm better than this country, I'm better than everybody. No one should contest what I say. This leads to poor national integration. And as the second opposition speakers just said, we are moving towards the era of getting a global village. But this cannot be achieved when one country thinks it's better than the other. The people of the country are gonna put the pride of the country before the well-being of others. This leads to very poor national integration and may even lead to wars breaking out and countries not respecting other countries' borders because they feel like they're better than the other. That's why even we can see in the history we're taught, because right now we're learning about first world, second world, and third world countries. Even that shows that there's very poor national integration because countries are being grouped according to their economy. Because some countries are seen to be better than others. They are not being put on the same level. So this is as a result of the history taught. Because as my first proposer said, we should have one book that is correctly researched upon so that all children learn the same thing. Because I feel like with varying versions of history being taught, some stories may be sugar-coated, and the example he had given of this community telling a different story about how a war occurred compared to another book explaining how the war occurred. So I feel like if we have one set of books that's nationally acclaimed so that we all learn the same thing, this will ensure that we learn both the good, bad, and the ugly, so that nothing is sugar-coated, nothing will be omitted, so that we can so that we can learn from our past mistakes, as my second opposition has said. Because once we learn from our mistakes, that's the only way we can move forward. So if we can all have history, if we can all learn history that has, if we can all learn the same versions of history, this will lead us to not only learning the good things, but the bad things. And from there, can progress as a people, as a country, towards achieving a global village. Yes, and just something to add to what the second opposition has said. I believe that racism hasn't gone down in the past few years, because in the past 3 months, more than 5 cases of race-related murders have been accounted for. Just the most recent one being yesterday, where an unarmed black man named George Floyd was murdered by cops in open air in broad daylight. So I believe that racism hasn't really gone down, rather it's gone up, because now Americans believe that they're better than everybody else. They believe that they're better than other races. That's why in America, racism is very, very high. So this is because America, I feel like what happens there is they're taught the good things they've done. And from the bad things that they're taught have been sugar-coated. So the children there grow up feeling like we conquered the world. We are the ones who made the world what it is. So no, I believe that racism has not gone down, but rather it has increased. So yes, that's basically what I have to say. And I strongly propose that versions of history taught by countries in the education system should not be designed to promote nationalistic pride. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Third proposition. We now welcome the third opposition to conclude the case of the opposition in this debate.
Hi. Okay. Michelle Adika here to oppose the motion that states this House believes versions of history taught by countries through the education system should not be designed to promote nationalistic pride. First of all, I'd like to respond to some of the statements that were made by the proposition team. When you say that nationalism gives people a big head or makes them think they are better, you have, like the first opposition said, you have a sense of pride in your family. you love each other and you love who you are as a family. But when you go into school, these are different people with different families, different views on their families, but they still manage to respect each other and actually live in harmony, despite the fact that they have pride for different existing families. You also talked about racism. Okay, yes, from the statistics you've given, racism hasn't exactly gone down, but it's not because Americans think they're better than everyone else. It's because the white people think they're better than the black people. From what you're saying, it's like you're saying black people aren't American citizens. Some of the people who go through some brutal racist acts are actual American citizens. The difference between the person facing it and the person actually doing it is the person doing it is white and the person facing it is black. But if we promote nationalism, like we are saying, then we are able to go over these barriers and get over the fact that someone is from a different ethnic group or a different race, because then that will actually bring a drastic drop in racism in countries like the US. Then something all the proposers have mentioned is that there are different versions of history and we need to find a similar version. That's almost impossible because there are different people who've gone through different states in history. There are different countries, different nations. Therefore, it's very difficult to avoid having different versions. The thing we can do is look for the same link in all these versions or something that's similar in all the versions and deliver this to students and teach them what exactly your nation did wrong, what they are doing to correct it, and the steps being taken to correct it or what they have corrected, because then this will promote nationalistic pride. We can't say we are going to have one version of history that everyone agrees on, because that's very difficult, because different people have gone through different things, so different people will have different views. And nations often construct themselves in opposition to an idea of otherness. For example, a big part of being Irish is not being Jewish. And this what brings a lot of war and opposition. And this what leaders with the wrong idea of nationalism take up and rally their citizens and their military groups against other nations. So what actually causes war isn't nationalism, it's the wrong idea of nationalism and taking the fact that there's difference between two different groups to bring war and conflict. Nationalism has reduced the cases of terrorism. Having nationalism, will reduce the cases of terrorism and terrorist attacks. For example, apart from being foreign infiltrators, a large majority of jihadist terrorists in the US are residents of the US or US-born citizens. For example, the 9/11 attack, according to News America, 9 of the attackers were actual American citizens. And this is very ironic because you wouldn't expect one of your people to be the same person bringing brutality and pain or inflicting pain on you and your family, because these are people you've grown up with, these are people you share the same ideas with, these are people in your country. So it will help reduce the number of terrorist attacks. And let's look at, for example, the Soviet Union. It fell because of lack of nationalism. Lack of nationalism led to things like corruption and internal wars because they didn't have that sense of pride in themselves or their people. Therefore, they were able to bring now individual thinking. You're thinking about your benefit, you're thinking about your gain. What are you going to gain from a certain leadership position? And this led to the fall of the Soviet Union. According to data from the World Bank, we are able to conclude that most countries that have a high sense of nationalism care more about breaking laws, care more about, am I going to hurt my neighbor? Am I going to go against their rights? Because they have this sense of national pride. So if we are able to promote nationalism, then we'll be at a state where you're able to care about your neighbors. And if you want to globally,
Thank you very much, Third Opposition, for your speech. We now welcome the opposition reply speaker to complete the case of the opposition. Who is doing the opposition reply? Anybody?
It's the second proposal.
Now I'm saying the opposition always goes first. Who is doing the opposition reply?
The second opposition speaker.
Okay, so you can go first. Just unmask yourself and right, let's go. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. Pauline Wawasi is still here to strongly oppose the motion. In conclusion, as previously mentioned by my teammates, we are not here to say that we should change the history or we should teach our students a history that makes us seem as heroes that we are not. We are here to say that the way we teach our students the history should be in a way that gives them a sense of pride, a sense of nationalism in belonging to a certain nation. This is the same nationalism that won countless African nations their independence, because African nations felt pride in knowing that they belonged to a certain nation, in understanding that they deserved their freedom. Therefore, we are not here to disagree with the proposition in saying that a similar history should be taught. We are simply here to say that nationalism should not be ignored in a way to sort of say that it causes wars or it drives nations apart. We are simply here to say that nationalism is a way to build peace. It's a way to ensure that a nation is growing together, that the people in a nation are living in harmony with each other. Thank you.
All right. Proposition reply.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
As you all know, my name is Brian Miner. I am a representative of Strathmore Schools, standing on the side of the proposition. We as a house believe that nationalism is important to the development and growth of a nation, but we do not believe that it should be the major factor influencing the teaching of history as a subject and as a principle in institutions of learning. As a mode or means of assessment, we wish to highlight matters that were not addressed by the opposition, but we feel we addressed. First was that the opposition noted that nationalism has a good side and a bad side. But what they failed to note was that really, how can it be utilized to bring about unity and eradicate racism? In regards to its good and bad sides, this is in reference to nationalism, we brought out the solution that we can simply stop categorizing countries based on their value to other countries, that is, first, second, and third world nations. Secondly, we feel as though the opposition mainly focused on nationalism and not its relationship to history. We personally highlighted that teaching history for what it is best, as teaching history in favor of one particular thing beats its purpose. History should be taught for what it is and not in favor of one particular thing. We wish to also note that the opposition ignored the prejudiced opinions of majorly Western nations having their ideas of African nations. We recognize the discrimination against African nations by Western nations, this including both Black and white nationals. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your conclusion, third prop. We have a bit of a time barrier, so I'll just thank you all for participating. So for all the high school students here, this is what we do. We organize friendlies between high schools, and today we had Strathmore School, for those who are joining us, sorry, versus Nova Pioneer Girls. And while the judges are putting together their thoughts, I'll not allow that. I'll tell you that tomorrow at about the same time, about 5, we will be having a friendly between Juja Senior School and royalty-packed debating academy from Zimbabwe. So we have Juja Senior School from Kiambu County going up against our southern neighbors from Zimbabwe tomorrow at 5 p.m. So if you're free, the links will be sent to your patrons and you can join the debate to watch Juja, or you can call it Kenya versus Zimbabwe, in a very interesting debate. So I'm sure, are the judges prepared? Are they ready? Ali, are you ready?
But give me like 3 seconds or 5 seconds. This was a heated debate, so I need some time.
Okay.
Gather my
Masharia, are
thoughts
you
together.
ready?
Set.
Okay, Masharia is ready, so Masharia can go first.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Masharia. I was judged in this round. So I'll begin with my ranking basically. And in this debate, I felt like Nova, I think, are the ones who take the day from me because I think Strath played into opposition's strategy, right? And I feel like Strathmore, especially the first and second speaker, and for everyone who was watching this debate, right? I think you need to learn, or you can try and work on what you call a strategic concession, right? Because the motion read, the House believes that versions of history taught by countries through the education system designed to promote nationalistic pride, right? So from the motion itself, there's an implicit burden that there's a problem with nationalistic pride, right? Or there's a problem that can come about because of nationalistic pride and because of teaching it to students, right? I felt like Strathmore didn't necessarily take that burden upon themselves. I felt like they chose to sanitize the word nationalistic pride and to argue it almost as if it's the same as patriotism, right? I felt like they took a soft line in trying to say that nationalism can be good or can be bad, and it all depends on whether or not we balance the scales, right? And I felt like that played into opposition's case, because what opposition ideally should have been doing is exactly what they did, which is to tell us that nationalism has an extreme and a mild form of nationalism, right? So for that reason, I felt like opposition today had an easy time raising their arguments because of the kind of construction that Strathmore from proposition gave. I felt like the third proposing speaker did a good job in trying to reconstruct what should have been done by the first two speakers, right? Because he's the one who comes to tell us about the fact that nationalism, and tries to bring about the idea that nationalism can have a negative impact on globalization, right? I felt like it came too late, right? I felt like if that was the stance that the team took from the start, right, from first proposing speaker, like if they had taken the stance that nationalism is bad from the get-go, then I felt like they would have won this debate, right? Because then you actually have a principle, like an argument about principles and whether or not the principle that you get from nationalism is actually something that we value, right? But I felt like the one thing I got from both sides of the teams, right, was a good use of examples, because both teams came with good examples. Second proposition speaker especially had a very good use of his examples about how, warped forms of or versions of history can be used, right? But I felt because of the case that they ran, necessarily that, nationalism can be or may be good or bad, then the examples don't necessarily carry the day for his side, right? But I felt like Nova, on the other hand, despite, added to the fact that they had good examples, they had a very good strategy of trying to show us the difference between extreme nationalism and, mild nationalism, and trying to explain to us why they think that, you can have mild nationalism and the kind of impacts that you have from mild nationalism, like trying, like easing up on social ills, which I felt like also Strathmore didn't do, right? I felt like Strathmore didn't engage as much on the case that was presented by opposition. I felt like they were intent on running their case and trying to run why they win, as opposed to why opposition doesn't win, right? Which I felt then left many of the opposition points standing, right? As opposed to opposition whose arguments were strategically lined to rebut and to deconstruct proposition cases. So in this debate, for me, I think Nova Pioneer won. Thank you.
What's this? Maybe the Panther is learning how to use tools.
Baba, can I go ahead?
Just
Hello.
Go.
Okay. So I think this was a great debate, and I want it to be as my judgment to be as summarized as possible, so as not to waste so much time. Okay. So personally, I like the debate today. It was a really engaging debate, and it's trying to show me a form of a maturity in the Kenyan debate circuit, of which at a point in time in today's debate, I felt like today's debate, I was in a form of a tie until one thing proved difference, right? So please allow me to start with justifications, then ranking, so that you guys can improve, because I don't want to submerge you guys into the ranking and think that I'm biased, okay? So I divided my judgment into three. One, engagement, okay? When it came to engagement in today's debate, I felt like Nova Pioneer won the day. Because the thing is, as much as the Strathmore team had good individuals and good debaters, they weren't able to take the argument and try to reconstruct to something called case repairing in debates. So the thing is, as much as you prepared a speech, you have to prepare another speech so that you can engage the opposition. So there is no way at times you can win debates just by preparing a speech and having strong arguments, right? But again, I didn't base my judgment on that only. Two, clashes, right? So when it came to clashes, I felt like Strathmore School was absorbing the arguments that were being presented by Nova Pioneer, right? So this is what was happening in the debate. When the second speaker and the third speaker were coming to talk, they were saying this, right? Okay, we are not against nationalistic, but we think this is the problem, okay? The problem is we don't have a form of a national integration, right? The problem also is when we have history that is being falsified, right? And I remember the second proposition providing a form of an analysis, right? Which I think, the thing is, I didn't get this, the second opposition engaging, right? When he started citing examples from Christopher Columbus and providing an example of the West Indies. He said this, right? When West Indies have been discriminated for the longest time, and these people are being viewed as lazy, how can we embrace nationalistic pride? So you guys, as much as yes, you agreed with that and said that, listen, we are not supporting extreme nationalism, but we are supporting moderate nationalism. At the same time, you guys had to say this. What will you do out of the history that has been written? Because that is true. When history was written about the West Indies who were eliminated by Christopher Columbus, you need to justify as to why that certain form of history shall be eliminated, right? Which I didn't get from the opposition, right? So where did my final clash came in this debate, and why I based my judgments this way, right? So the clash also came in when it came to deep analysis. So the thing is, Nova Pioneer was an extremely good team, right? When they came up with all their points and they were extremely strategic, or that you win on strategy. You came in and said this, right? We don't embrace extreme nationalism, and you give the examples of the Nazis, and you also give the examples of Mussolini, right? Perfect, good research, and the research on Soviet Union. But there is one pending question that was the tiebreaker in today's debate. And if you guys pay to the attention to the debate really well, you'll realize there was a clash on revisionist history vis-a-vis wrong idea of history. While opposition did very well and said there was a wrong idea of history, these other guys are saying this, right? For us to embrace national pride, we have to revise history and integrate it. So this is my judgment. This is my final statement in today's debate. this is what proposition brought in, and I think this is why I side with Strathmore. They said this, right? This house believes the version of history should not be designed to promote nationalistic pride until we revise history into national integration, and how they provide racism, right? How can we embrace Americanism while racism is still on the far end, right? While we embrace even moderate nationalism, we still haven't revised history. I think that's where, for me, that's where the clash was in today's debate, and I think that's where Strathmore School won, right? The thing is, in debates, you have to engage. It's one of the most fundamental principles. With that, I rest my case. Thank you, Baba.
All right, guys. So you've heard it from the judges. Today we only had 2 judges, guys. So we can call it a tie. We have a 1-1 draw. So what I would like to request all of you to do is to log into maybe the Strathmore Debate Society Instagram and Twitter page and follow them. And from that, I think I can declare that the meeting is over. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much, all the speakers, for joining us. And, you know, we meet tomorrow when Juja faces Zimbabwe. So thank you very much for your time. Today, Nova and Strathmore have a 1-1 tie. Maybe I could have given my who I thought won, but it will not be fair because I'm the one who's organizing. So if you want to know what I thought, maybe you can reach out to me in my inbox. So other than that, guys, time's up, and thank you very much.